Hello, everybody, and welcome to another session of Systems for Success. My name is Katelyn Fulton with Century 21 Percy Fulton, and I'm excited to present you guys with our newest system called Pricing Strategies. It's going to be a pretty jam-packed session today, but I'm really excited to get to it. So let's get started. So we are going to be talking again all about different systems for pricing strategies. Just an introduction. So for the past couple of years, we have had such a strong real estate market for so long, and that has really allowed agents to kind of be lazy and price houses basically how they want, because typically when you would list a home, you knew that you were going to get maybe 80, 90 showings. You knew you were going to get quite a bit of offers, and you knew you were probably going to get above asking price in whatever price you decided to do it at. But when the market starts changing, you need to become very skilled at pricing properties and the strategy of how to price a property as well. So basically in this type of market, your skills really need to be sharpened. So we are going to be going over quite a bit with you guys on different ways to price properties in any type of market. And it's going to be really good. So let's get right to it. So let's imagine a life without an overpriced listing. How would that affect your confidence? How would that affect your energy? And how would that affect your love for this career? If you've ever had an overpriced listing, I can assure you that you probably have had pretty low confidence in your skills. Your energy is probably extremely drained because having an overpriced listing comes with a lot of emotions and a lot of stress. And a lot of people are just like, they don't even want to be in this career. They're like, forget it, I'm done. My confidence is over. What am I doing in real estate? So really by having that overpriced listing can really affect how you see this world and how you see this career. And most agents do start their career off by finding buyers, and typically they're running on a hamster wheel. They are running around with showings, they're throwing in offers. It's a very busy, chaotic life when you're only working with buyer clients. So as you start to get deeper into your career, you may start to consider working with mostly sellers and becoming a listing agent. Now, listing agents are extremely skilled at not only getting a listing, but at also pricing those properties properly. Weaker agents out there often take overpriced listings, and not because they don't know how to price a property. It's typically because they don't have the confidence or the scripts to really stand up to a seller and let them know, I don't think this is what your house is worth. And they usually just end up taking the listing just to get a listing. So by not sharpening your listing skills, you're really leading yourself to pain, really tough conversations about price adjustments. And then in most cases, you end up going back to just chasing buyer clients because you've just lost confidence in yourself as a listing agent. One of the biggest stresses for a listing agent is really pricing a home properly. Now, what are the consequences of an overpriced listing for you as a listing agent? So trying to market an overpriced listing can really cost a lot of time. It can cost you a lot of money, and it can cost you a lot of energy. So when you've got an overpriced listing, typically that property is going to be on the market for a long time. And sometimes it consumes you. Like that house being on the market for so long and not getting as much action as you want it can really consume you. And you end up spending a lot of time on just trying to get that house sold. It could also cost you a lot of money. You may end up having to do more postcards. You may have to do more extra marketing costs. Staging, for example, typically you pay for 1 month of staging. And if that property is overpriced and sitting on the market a little bit longer, you're going to have a higher chance of probably having to pay for an extra month. So it really can cost you quite a bit more money. So the amount of time and energy that you're going to spend on that listing can really take away from doing the other things like prospecting for new business. So your sign may also be up for a long time, and you may have people in the neighborhood wondering why that home's not selling, and therefore your reputation in that little area can also get damaged. By having an overpriced listing, you may have an angry client just because they're wondering what is happening, why is the house not selling, and naturally you're not even going to want to sell a listing anymore and ultimately stick with buyers. A seller could be struggling because they just want to move on. They just want to sell the house. They just want to get to the next chapter in your life. And you kind of typically take on that burden of their stress as well. And ultimately, the seller is going to get less money with an overpriced listing because the longer that home is on the market, the lower the price is going to go. So if they list at a proper price, which we're going to talk all about, the chances of it sitting on the market less is a lot higher if you know how to price that property correctly. So how do we become masterful at pricing now in today's market? So number one, there's a few different things that you want to do. So number one, we want to make sure that you are prospecting for listings. So typically in a changing market, you typically go from something that's very high paced, and that's what we've been really used to lately is a very high paced market. And people are really, they're calling you. You've got lots of friends, you've got families, past clients, they're calling you, asking for you to give them an update on the market, what's their house worth. And you don't really need to prospect anymore because people are just naturally calling you. But when the market shifts over, you're going to find that you have a lot more time on your hands, your phone's not ringing as much, and there's no more FOMO happening. People aren't desperate to get into the market. So during this type of shifting market, you're going to have to put prospecting into your daily schedule, especially prospecting for listings. Another thing you want to be doing when you are in this type of market is you need to spend some time on that listing presentation. You want to have a nice organized PowerPoint presentation. It can either be on paper, it can be digital. You want to start practicing your role-playing skills, whether you're with another agent, whether it's a family member, it could be yourself in a mirror. You really want to spend time perfecting that listing presentation because it's really going to be harder to get listings in this type of market, or you're going to be competing with some very strong listing agents that were very strong in the seller's market, but they're also going to be strong in a more balanced market as well. So you need to spend time really perfecting that listing presentation as well. And if you missed our session, we did focuses 4 and 5 on the listing presentation and how to leverage a listing. So I would really encourage you guys to go back to those sessions after this to check out what you guys need to be doing to really get that listing presentation going. Number 3, during this type of time and type of market, you really need to be sharpening your market knowledge and your pricing skills. And that's all we're going to be talking about today. So if you get skilled at getting listings, but you're not skilled at pricing those listings, then you've really done a lot of work for nothing. Because if that home doesn't sell because we didn't price it properly, then you went through the efforts of prospecting to get that listing. You went to a listing presentation, prepared for it to get their business. And now you've prepared that home for the market that isn't selling. So we really need to get you guys skilled and ready to go for this type of market. Okay, so here's some suggested tactics and tools and the different types of markets that you're going to be experiencing. So we're going to review the 3 types of markets. We're going to know the difference between what a price is and what a pricing strategy is, the information that you're going to need to find the correct pricing strategy, and you're going to need an understanding of the 3 pricing strategies and how to use them. So let's get to it. So there are 3 types of real estate markets. There is a rising market, which typically favors the seller. And usually what that means is there's more buyer demand than there are sellers. Usually you will see less than 6 months of inventory as well. In a balanced market, typically the demand is equal. So there's an equal amount of buyers to sellers, and it's usually around 4 months of inventory. In a falling market, this market typically favors the buyer. So there's usually more sellers or more homes for sale than there are buyers out there. And usually it's about more than 4 months of inventory on the market. So let's go over the first type of market, which is the rising market, or otherwise known as a seller's market. So I've got a couple graphs here, as you can see. On the bottom axis, you guys will see time. And on the side, you're going to see price. So the indicated price right here on the chart is given by the CMA, or a comparable market analysis. This is what the true value of a home is. Now this arrow up here typically indicates that the market is rising. In this type of market, there's going to be more buyers than there are sellers. And typically a seller can actually price it above that indicated price if they're willing to wait. So if they decide that they're willing to wait for that price, this strategy can work. It may take time for the market to catch up, but in a rising market, eventually that price is going to go up to where the seller wants it. Now, the risk of pricing a home above the indicated sales price in a rising market is that the market can suddenly change. For example, what we saw back in the pandemic in March 2020, we saw that all of a sudden the market was hot and it changed in literally a day. We also saw in 2017 when the stress test came about, think it was April 21st, 2017, we were seeing a really rising market, and then all of a sudden that was done. So things can change very quickly. So there is a risk of taking that time and trying to get that price because anything can happen. Another risk is if the home has an appraisal and the price is too high. So that is another issue that you may run into when the buyers are purchasing the home. So we don't forget that we do need to close the property. So if the appraisals aren't coming in properly, that can really affect the sale as well. So you can price the home higher than the value if the seller is willing to wait in the rising market. Now, the second type of market is a balanced market. So like we said, this is where there's an equal amount of buyers and an equal amount of sellers. So here we've got the indicated price and then the seller's price. So what they want, but what the market is actually telling them. So you can see that the arrow is now flat, which indicates that this is a balanced market. So what happens if the seller still wants to overprice that property? Well, the market is not increasing like the last one to meet that price. And the result is going to be that the seller is going to wait, and they may need to actually do a price reduction, and it could sell for under what it would have sold for if you had priced it properly in the beginning. So the longer that the home is on the market, people start to wonder what is wrong with the home. And as a buyer's agent, you're like, yeah, the home's been on the market for a long time. So it gives that buyer a lot more negotiating power as well. So it might actually sell for less. It may actually put less in their pocket, which can lead them in a bad position financially. So the last thing you want to be doing is chasing the market, especially in a balanced market when the price isn't really going up or down, it's just staying the same. Okay, now the third type of market, again, is a falling market. So this is otherwise known as a buyer's market, where there's more sellers than there are buyers. And you can see that the arrow here is going downwards over time. So the prices just keep going down and down and down the more time that we wait. So if a seller does want to list above what the indicated sales price is from a CMA, they may never actually catch up with the market because they're overpriced and the market's going down. So they're just going to be forever chasing after that price. So we saw this happen in 2008. We also saw it in mid-2020. And in this situation, the sellers are really just chasing a down market. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the indicated sales price versus a pricing strategy. So this is how we're going to find the correct pricing strategy for you. So there is a difference between an indicated sales price, which is actually the price range that's discovered by a CMA or the true value of a home. And a pricing strategy is the practice of finding the best way to get from where you are to where you want to be, also known as the marketing price of a home. So if you've ever seen a home listed, say $599, but it's actually worth $800, that is the strategy. The strategy is to get as many buyers in the door as possible and to get as many offers as possible for your clients. So that strategy doesn't always work in each market, which we're going to talk about, but that is what a marketing pricing strategy is. So how do we find the correct pricing strategy? Well, there are 4 pieces of information that you're going to need to discover the best pricing strategy. So number 1, which we've talked about, is the indicated sales price via a CMA. This is typically what most real estate agents do. They look at the comparable sales, what's happening in the area, and then they price it according to that. But we want to take it a step further with 3 other things to do. So number 2 is to also check out what type of market are we in. Are we in a seller's market? Are we in a balanced market? Or are we in a buyer's market? Number 3 is what's most important to the seller? And this is a very important question to ask them. Is time most important to that person, or is it money? Typically, they're going to say money, but some people also have time on their mind as well. And number 4 is the evaluation of the competition, otherwise known as what is also on the market and at the same time as that property. So let's talk about each of these different pieces of information that you're going to need to discover for the best pricing strategies. So number 1, the CMA. So determine the anticipated price range via a CMA. So when you were in real estate school, they taught you that doing a CMA was the way to find the best price. So when you start to work more with sellers, you're going to start to realize that a CMA alone doesn't give you an idea of what's actually happening in the market at that current time. So doing a CMA is only one piece of this puzzle when you're choosing a strategy. Number two is discovering the market trend. So how do we discover if it's a buyer, seller, or balanced market? Well, it's determined by an absorption rate. So if no more homes in this price point and location were to come onto the market, how long would it take for all of those homes in that price point and location to be absorbed or sold in the market at that current rate? So this is really going to show you how many months of inventory there is for a similar house in a similar area. Months of inventory is the other word that you've probably heard, but months of inventory can tell you if the market is a buyer's market, a seller's market, or a balanced market. So usually people will ask us how the market is. We usually say, it's great, it's wonderful, it's hot. But some price points are actually in a buyer's market. Some are in a seller's market, and then there's some areas that are actually in a balanced market. So make sure that you have a script for when somebody asks you, tell them that we're headed towards an X market, and then ask what neighborhood they're in, because that could change and it's going to show that you know what you're talking about. You're not just using these big words like hot or it's bad, it's terrible. You can really break it down to a specific area. Now, how do we calculate an absorption rate? So one, you need to know the price range that's determined by the CMA. So in this case, let's say 900 to 925,000. Number two, you need to know how many homes in this price point are currently on the market, which is 6, and how many homes in this price point have sold in the past 30 days. Now let's say 4. So if you take that number of houses that are on the market, which is 6, divided by the number that has sold, which is 4, you will see that there is 1.5 months of inventory, which would show you that this is a very strong seller's market. So anything that's above 6 months, you will see that that's a buyer's market. Around 6 months of inventory is about a balanced market, and anything less than 6 months is a seller's market. So this is really how you determine what type of market you are in. You can find these details on the Toronto Market Watch. There's a whole chart showing each area and how many homes have sold in that area by month, how many houses are actively on the market. So you can calculate this pretty easily just by going to Toronto Market Watch. Now let's look at number 3. So what is most important to the seller? Is it price or is it time? So these are the most important questions that you can ask the seller to really figure that out. So what if they say both? Well, they might, but let's ask these questions just to find out. So 1, if the world was perfect, when would you like your check? Or when would you like the money in your bank account? This is going to help you know what their thoughts are on time. Number 2, what would happen if your home sells really quickly? And if they say they can't sell quick, you're going to know that maybe they aren't as ready as they think they are or as you think they are. Number 3, what happens if the house doesn't sell? Well, this is going to determine the pain. If they say that they will wait for next year, or maybe it's a problem and they need to sell, this is going to give you their motivation as well. Last thing you want to hear is, oh, we can wait. We'll wait for the right price. We'll be patient. That's kind of a red flag for you as an agent as well. Number 4, what is most important, price or time? So just straight up asking them what's more important. Okay, the 4th piece of information that you're going to need to know to determine the right pricing strategy is, who is your competition? So just like shopping for a product, a lot of buyers will compare that product to other brands that are on the market. So you have to understand what the competition is up to. And by competition, I mean what other houses are on the market at the same time as you're going to be on the market. So you want to compare all of the homes in the chart. So the reason you want to do this is because if you're working with buyers, just think about it. You're going to be taking them on tours. You may take them to see 4 or 5 houses, and they're going to compare every single house that they see in that area to each other. They are each other's competition. So if you're priced too high or too low, it's going to throw some flags into the buyer's eyes. So we want to make sure that you know what's happening out there. Now, we always make a recommendation when you are about to put a property on the market, go visit each of those listings in person so that you know exactly what they look like in person and how it really compares. Instead of just looking at photos, you really want to get a good idea of it. Now, without a CMA, let's take this from a competition perspective. So these are the direct competitions. So let's pretend you got Apple Street, Pear Street, Orange Street, Plum Street, Fig Street. So you got to figure out where your property falls in between these. So if your house is rated, say, less than orange, but you listed it higher than orange, you're going to help sell orange. But if your property is better than orange and you list below what orange is listed for, your property is going to look a lot more ideal to them. So we need to determine if your price is going to fall based on the competition. If they need to sell fast, then we may need to drop the price so that it compares positively to the competition. And the buyers, again, are going to be comparing them all against each other. So we need to place their home based on the competition. So those are the 4 things that we need to know before we determine the strategy. And just so you guys know, like with a strategy, typically you actually will not pick that pricing strategy probably until the day before you go live. So if you're at a listing presentation and they're not quite ready to sell that day, that month, then let them know, like, this is where your house falls in today's market. But when it comes to the pricing strategy to get that price, we're going to determine that probably the day before we go live or the day that we do go live, because we want to check out the competition and what's actually on the market before we make any decisions. So that is going to be a deciding factor literally when you're going live on the market. So for pricing strategies, once you've determined the CMA, what trend of the market you're in, what's the most important to the sellers and the competition, now you're ready to talk about those strategies. So there's 3 possible strategies that can happen. So you're either going to price the home above the competition, you're going to price the home with the competition, or you're going to price the home below the competition. So let's talk about this. As soon as the sign hits the yard, that house is no longer a house. That house just became a product for sale. So every product, when it comes to pricing them, there is a question about where to price it, above, below, or with. So let's compare a pen, for example. I'm just making up a random object that people are going to be selling, but let's pretend you're selling a pen. What should we price it at? Pricing is going to be exactly the same for a home than it is for a pen. So principles of economics will come into play. Now, the only major difference between a home and a product is that a home actually does come with an emotional attachment. So as we work through these strategies that we're going to talk about, it should help with that emotional component as well and really take it away, because now you're turning it into something more factual, objective, and it's not an emotional process. It's all based on what's actually happening in the real estate market and not on your client's emotions. Okay, so pricing strategy number 1. So let's say we want to price the home above the competition. So this is what the price is worth and the indicated sales price, but this is what your clients want. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, they indicated that the sales price is X amount. However, the market is going up. So there are more buyers than sellers. So you can see that by that arrow going up, that the market is going up. Therefore, we have an opportunity to list the home higher. Now, if they list higher, they may actually have to wait for the market to meet their price. So even though they may get that price, they may actually have to sacrifice waiting a little bit longer to get it. So that may not be a good strategy if time is important to them as well. So we know that the indicated sales price by the CMA, we know the market trend is rising. The seller wants to list their home above the indicated price, which is good unless they want to sell quickly. So if they want to sell quickly, again, this is not a good strategy for them. Now, when you lay out the strategy for them and say, you know, based on what we're seeing on your CMA, the trends, the importance of time to you, and the competition, I think the best strategy should be X. And you're going to decide in that moment if that is a good strategy for them, or if you need to list at or below that price that they want. So this is a great approach or a great script to show the sellers that you know what you're talking about. This increases your credibility, which is important, but it also makes you more of a partner with the seller. Instead of just telling them what to price the home at, now you're becoming partners in that decision-making process. Okay, let's talk about pricing strategy number 2, where you're going to price the home with the competition. So here's the indicated sales price, and they indicated that price is the most important to the seller. And this here you see is a more balanced market. So in a more balanced market, you may want to actually price the home with the competition because the prices are balanced. There's no up, there's no down, the prices are just stable. So you may decide in a stable market to price it at what is happening with the competition. So if we price it with the competition in a balanced market, then the price is the most important to the seller, not time. If you price something with everything else, then we can reduce the chances of it selling unless the home has something unique about it. Otherwise, honestly, the strategy is pretty vanilla and it doesn't really stand out if you're pricing exactly what's happening with the competition. So you may actually decide to list slightly below the competition as it's hard for it to stand out. So even if it's listed only $500 below the competition, that's going to make it stand out a little bit more than your competition. So this is a really good strategy if the market is balanced. Pricing strategy number 3. So this is when you're going to price the home below the competition. So here's the indicated sales price and here's the price that you want. And you can see in this case, the market's actually going downwards. So pretend we're in a buyer's market in this case, where there's more houses than there are buyers. And so the prices are just going to go down. So you may decide on this strategy to list below the competition for 2 reasons. The market is flat and you want to sell it fast. You may choose to list slightly under the indicated sales price. The market is starting to fall, and by pricing it below the value, you can catch that market if it's dropping. So as the time goes, the price is getting worse and worse and worse. So you may decide to catch the market early and underprice it right away, and then it may sell a lot quicker for a higher price, especially if you're going down. So this is a really good strategy to do if we're in a falling market or a buyer's market. So let's summarize all 3 of these strategies. So we just threw a lot of information at you. We talked all about the market trends, talked about prices, and then we talked about pricing strategy. So let's talk about strategy number 1. Listing above the price that they want is good if the market is going up and the seller is willing to wait. Strategy number 2, listing with the market is good if the market is balanced and they want it to sell fast, or if the market is flat and price is most important to them. Strategy number 3, which is listing below the market, is good if the market is flat and they want to sell quickly, or if the market is falling. So what are the advantages to this system of pricing? Well, you're going to give your clients 4 data points. You're going to be giving them a CMA. You're going to give them the market trends, the importance of time or price, as well as what's happening with the competition. You're being collaborative by laying out each one of the strategies and having a discussion around each one of them. And once you decide the strategy that works best for them, then you can drill down to the price versus coming in with a price and telling them that this is the strategy. So now you're becoming partners in that decision-making process. So how might you change your pricing systems? So if you change one thing, it would likely be the trends, which is seller's market, balanced market, or buyer's market. A CMA is going to tell you one thing, but what's happening in the market and the competition is really going to show something different. So to end this off, we're going to talk with a little bit of a quote, which is, appraisers are historians, real estate agents are fortune tellers. So I really hope that pricing strategy session really helps with you guys. Lots of things to think about. But as always, if you have a listing that you're struggling with, or you need some questions or someone else to bounce ideas off, you have the whole management team at Century 21 Percy Fulton. That is what we're here for. We will help you with your CMAs. We will help you with your listing presentations, and we will, of course, help you with your pricing strategies. So please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us. Thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to our next session with you. Talk to you guys soon.